Hey y'all, it's Peppermint, and I am so excited for this conversation today with Chad. But I wanted to take a quick minute to remind you that in just a couple of weeks, on July 2nd, right after Pride, you should tune in to the premiere of season 3, the third and final season of Survival of the Thickest. There is going to be lots of tea spilled, darling. Check it out on Netflix, July 2nd.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of He's Not Wrong. I'm your host, Chad D. There are people who exist in this world, and then there are people who change it by showing up and getting to work. My guest today, Peppermint, is the latter. Peppermint made history as the first out transgender woman to compete on RuPaul's Drag Race, and then made history again as the first out transgender woman to originate a principal role on Broadway. Behind every barrier that she broke, there was a fight that most people never saw, a cost that most people never counted, and a choice she made over and over again to be visible in a world that has spent a very long time telling people like her to disappear. At a moment when over 500 anti-LGBTQ plus bills have been introduced across the country in a single year, when trans stories are being legislated out of classrooms and trans lives are being legislated out of public life, Peppermint is not stepping back. She's stepping forward literally, as she is the 2026 New York City Pride Grand Marshal. She is a performer, an activist, a writer, a documentarian, a voice for queer people of color who have been written out of history and are now fighting their way back into it. Today, we're talking about visibility and taking action, what that means, what it costs, and why it matters now more than ever. So without further ado, please welcome today's guest, Peppermint. Peppermint, welcome to He's Not Wrong. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you, Chad. I am excited for Pride and the summer heat. I'm excited for a change from whatever we've been going through. Let's just put it that way.
Has it been hot up in the Northeast?
No, it hasn't. I mean, listen, we've had some warm days, through spring and even through winter, oddly enough. It was pretty typical for a nation and a world that is undergoing the most extreme of climate change. Meaning, I don't know what season is by the weather. You can't tell by the weather anymore. It was legit 40 degrees like 3 days ago, and now it is 93.
Yes, it is. People in Alabama are calling it Maycember. The other morning, I was trying to sit
Yeah.
on my balcony and drink my coffee, and I had to go inside because it was 48 degrees on like May 8th, and my toes were freezing off. I was like, people on Facebook are saying, people want to say it's climate change, but look how cold it is outside. I'm like, exactly. It's May and it's cold. That is quite
And it's
literally,
cold.
that's the definition of climate change. It's not normal.
It has changed. Yeah, so
Yes.
it is the devil's dick out here, but tomorrow I'm probably going to be wearing my parka. So let's see.
I love that. Listen, before we get into this episode, which I'm so excited that you're on because this is the second episode of Pride Month for me, for my audience to listen to, and this episode is going to focus on visibility, as you know, and as the audience knows by this point. But I'm really happy that you come on because I have to tell you, or I'm happy that you're on because I have to tell you, I have not stopped trying to like fight for you since your elimination on the Traitors. I'm so mad about it. I don't think I'll ever be over it. I feel like it was targeted, not fair. Like, give me a quick little download on that just before we move into the episode. Yeah, T. Yup.
Darling, I listen, I'm a huge fan of not only Traitors, but anything that's like murder mystery related. My favorite movie
Yes.
is Clue. And so I love the Traitors. I've seen every single season of every single franchise that they have, UK, Australia, New Zealand, all of it. And I love the show. And I guess that's what I kind of got wrong. I went on as a fan, not realizing that I might be going on with people who are like professional. Like when I say professional, I mean professional as in the only job they've had for the past 20 years, ostensibly, is reality TV competition like
Yeah.
Survivor and
Yeah.
Housewives. And these folks are conniving little bitches, honey. And their shows are rooted in deception and betrayal, which is obviously a part of traitors.
Yep.
But those people, one of the things that's not a skill that needs to be developed on Housewives is murder mystery solving or figuring out anything. Same thing with Survivor. Like you just like harm people, but you don't have to like figure out who did the what. But that is a key part of like a murder mystery moment. And so I was focused on the let's find the clue. And they're like, let's just get out who we don't like. And so, I made the mistake of having a conversation in good faith with Trishelle, who comes from the real world and MTV shows. And anyway, she really did turn an innocent conversation about fashion into an indictment against the only black trans woman in the house.
It is crazy to me because I was so excited we were on. I'm a fan of RuPaul. I was a fan of The Traitors season 1. So to see you representing our community on The Traitors, it was huge. And what did that representation mean to you being on The Traitors, being able to have yourself reflected in that format?
It meant a lot, which is probably why why I was so hurt. Like I do feel like I was lied about on the show.
Yeah.
Like, there was some stuff that was edited about, but in order to build a case against me, since no one had any proof that I was actually a murderer or a traitor on the show, she needed to build a case against me. And the case that was built against me was basically just using my dramatic, reactions
Yep.
as proof that I must be a killer, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And, you know, so I took that personally, but then even more, what was at stake for me was that visibility because this was 2023 that this was filmed, and then well, I think it came out in 2023. So I guess it was filmed in 2023, came out beginning of 2024.
Yep.
And I could sense, I could feel it in the air. The winds of change were happening for the LGBT community, for everybody that might fall under DEI. And so I knew that the country was about to become more transphobic.
Yeah.
And I could feel it and I could even taste it in the experience that I was having with the crew there. Oh my gosh, my camera's going crazy. Even my camera agrees. She's like, girl, let's go. I can change that in a minute if we need to, but
It's all good.
and so I could feel that was happening, and I knew what was at stake, getting ready to change sort of like the political. I knew that the Biden era, whatever, for better or for worse, that we were
Yep.
in, was going to change. And so it was important for me to get some visibility for people to just see a trans person doing the same thing that everybody else was doing.
Yes.
And I just wanted to play the game. I didn't want to like get up there and like preach about being trans, which I didn't. I just was
Yep.
there playing the game until the last moment. I had an opportunity to sort of speak for myself. And so I took it pretty personally because I at that time I said visibility is everything.
Yes. Yes.
I don't, that's not how I feel today, but that is certainly how I felt. I thought that the only thing we had and the only thing that we could rely on and the only thing that we could use and depend on is visibility. That's it. Visibility is going to be the be all end all for all of our rights and everything we need, just visibility and we'll all be rich. You know, that's not true, but that's how I felt. So it was important for me at the time. I just don't think that visibility was everything back then, but from the 2026 lens, now that the entire world has changed post 2024, like in the past 2 years, and so certainly the needs of the community have changed as well.
Peppermint, I also have to say, like, I might have been a little slow to the game, but even maybe summer, fall of last year, I was still thinking like visibility is don't get me wrong, it is important, but I have now evolved even since the past like 10 months, knowing that we have to do more. I had a guest on, his name's Rob Sanders, and he writes children's books. He's a gay author, writes children's book about our gay history, gay rights, LGBTQI plus community, Harvey Milk, all these things, introducing kids to our history, allowing kids to see themselves reflected in these books. He's the #1 most banned author.
I was going to say
America.
the bans must be banning.
Yes, they are banning on him. But he told me that he wrote a book for trans kids, And he had a 10-year-old write to him and say, like, thank you so much for writing this book. Like, because of this book, I read this one. And because of this book, I read this one. And because of that, like, I am feeling comfortable to be myself in front of my parents. And it just goes to show that being visible and having that representation in all forms of media is so important. But what you just laid out perfectly is it's not enough. So kind of lay out for me, what more should we and can we be doing when visibility is not enough for us right now?
I think it's really important. Listen, visibility is an important ingredient. I would say that what we need is multiple tools because it's certainly true that the attacks that the community is facing, when I say the community, I mean more than one thing. As a black trans person, I mean,
Yep.
as a black person, we're seeing voting rights being attacked. We're seeing obviously trans rights being attacked vociferously with the utmost enthusiasm. And so we can't just say, well, gosh, I'm so happy that such and such an actor is on a TV show as an out gay person. That's going to help our voting rights or our trans. That's not. And so we need more than one tool
Yep.
because the attacks on the community and various communities are more sophisticated. They are varied and they're layered. And they're not just one thing. It's not just we're keeping you off of television. It's so many things, right? And they are
Yeah.
actually using the identities of many marginalized communities to now attack and dismantle the constitutional rights
Mm.
of people in this country. And so that goes beyond just being able to be on a TV show.
Yeah.
And so I think that, it's important that we utilize some of the same tools that the same communities were utilizing the first time we were fighting for our civil rights, to whether it's enfranchisement or health protection rights, things like that. Everything from the civil rights era to all the way through women's lib and women's rights and reproductive access, and obviously through even maybe even marriage equality, which obviously came much later. Certainly AIDS and HIV activism through the 80s with ACT UP. Uh, we need community in a way that we have to redefine what community,
Yep.
or maybe remind ourselves of what community really means. Community to me is sort of like an umbrella term that really can
Yes.
mean a group of people that provides anything that you can need in the moment.
Yes.
Whether it's safety, protection, physical safety, whether it's company and sort of like, companionship, whether it's mutual aid and providing things for each other that, listen, I can't cook, but I went to nursing school and I can take care of whatever you need physically and you provide the food and together we'll have what we need. And oh snap, you can build a house. Great. Now we'll have somewhere to live, we'll have food and we'll have health. And
Yes.
even if the government shuts down healthcare and shuts down housing and shuts down the grocery stores, we're going to have everything we need because we're doing it for ourselves. Everything we need, we can provide for ourselves. I
Yes.
know that it feels like we can't get food or get clothing without logging on to Amazon, but like everything we need as human beings existed before any corporation was ever a thing.
Yes.
Everything we need. And we still have those things. The corporations are trying to take ownership of those things and privatize them and cause us to uh, get a subscription. But everything we need can come from community and can come from this planet and the resources that the planet has to give. And I think that is more important than putting all of our energy into fighting for visibility, especially
Mm.
considering the reason I want visibility is so that I can have equal rights. And what does that mean? I want equal rights so that I can have fair access to employment, so that I can have a house, so that I can get access to food, so that I can get access to health and safety. Those things, the visibility was maybe a shortcut for getting equal rights. And ultimately, yes, I want the equal rights to release a record on a record label, but ultimately, I just want, at the end of the day, when it comes down to brass tacks, I want housing, healthcare, and health and safety, housing, and like those are the two things I really want.
Mhm.
And then beyond that, I want job protection and being able to enjoy my civil and my constitutional rights in this country. And so those are the most important things that visibility can get us. And if we are losing those things but still have visibility, love is love don't mean anything. Love is
Right.
love meant a lot when we felt like we had everything we needed. But love is love doesn't mean anything when you're looking for tools that can help you permanently sort of lock in your civil rights and your constitutional rights. Love is love doesn't work in a courtroom or doesn't, you can't
Yep.
use love is love as you can't use slogans or even visibility. Magazine covers are not going to save us. We need, a slogan would have been sounded great before, like the right to choose or whatever, it's a slogan sounded great when we thought that, reproductive access and rights to abortion were enfranchised, but they weren't. They were never codified. And so, like, we were sitting around saying slogans. Well, what we needed to do was get our politicians to lock that in so that it could not be taken away. That's
Yes.
what we need to be focused on.
110%. And I'm
I
happy
know I
that you
just
bring up.
preached.
No, preach all you want. I love it. And it's important for you to preach on that topic because it really ties it in for the audience, the importance of what you're saying, because we talk about on this podcast so much the importance of community with what's happening at the national level. It can be really hard to know where to get started, where to get involved, how to make an impact. But it can't be stated enough the power of getting involved in your local community. And we've had guests on here before when ICE was really at their peak in our communities, which by the way, they're still in our communities, are still wreaking havoc, whether we see it in the news or not. But
Mhm.
when it was really prevalent in the news a few months ago, we had guests coming on saying, one of the things that you can do for your community right now is ask your neighbors, what groceries can I go buy you? Because it is unsafe for them
Mhm.
to walk into a grocery store. It's unsafe for them to walk their kids to school. So offer to take their kids to school. So there's a power that we have when we use the skills and resources that we have to lift up other people. So I'm really happy that you drove that point home. So again, preach all you want because it is so important. And to another point that you're talking about, I think what you're underscoring here is how those on the left who love to use slogans, like I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Democrats are horrible at strategy. They are horrible at playing the long game. And it is time that we start playing the game by the rules that they make. Whether I don't want to hear about morals and ethics. If they're changing the rules mid election cycle to play this game, well, then let's play it too. That's me
I agree, but I'm
preaching.
going to push back. I,
Okay.
I mean, I 100% agree, but I'm going to push back a little bit. The strategy that the Democrats are failing at, which they are failing at strategy and messaging and all that. The strategy that they're failing at is understanding that when we say the Democrats, I don't mean Democratic voters. Of course, we're talking about the Democratic
We're talking
establishment,
about the big
political
D, the
establishment.
party. Yes.
Yeah, big D Democrats. They are failing at strategy, but I think that the strategy that they're failing at is realizing that the voters are now becoming hip to the game. And the
Yes.
game for big D Democrats is certainly now and has been accept money to distract the voters with slogans while we allow
Hmm.
corporations to take over and run through our politics. And if they can run through our politics, they can run through everything that politics govern. And politics govern everything:
Yes.
entertainment, healthcare, jobs, the deficit, war, international issues, the military, civil rights, like politics govern over all of those things. So
Yes.
corporations buying politicians and the ones who make the decisions about all of those things means that corporations control everything in our lives, not just our jobs. And so the Democrats' job, I believe, or their function, maybe it's not their job, but it's certainly their function, and maybe it is their job because they literally get paid to do it, is to distract or become a sort of smokescreen. Like all you have to do is worry about visibility. That's it. Once you have visibility, so you all argue over visibility while we're over here making sure that Flint still doesn't have
Yep.
clean water.
Yep. I mean,
You know?
yes. And you know what? That's fair pushback. That is fair pushback because that is an area where we can be doing better. And I'm more of a generalist because I'm just so mad at what they have been able to like allow happen in Alabama. It was
Same.
like Alabama became a super majority. Republican supermajority about 20 years ago, and then it was just like the Democratic Party just said, "Okay, all right,
They just gave up.
fights out." Yes, and
Yeah,
so
because I
it's
knew that not because I knew. That's when I realized, certainly after that, I share the frustration, and the frustration of me pacing it around in my apartment and hitting myself over the head. Why are these Democrats literally sitting there and doing nothing when things
yes,
like this are happening? I realized that I just had to watch the behavior of many of the Democratic officials or electeds or candidates who were like, all you have to do is send me money and I will address this. And then it was like, then Tuesday, all you have to do is send me money and I will address this. Wednesday, all you have to do is send me money and I will address this. Thursday, all you have to do is send me money. I'm like,
hmm
boo, we've been sending you money. We've been voting for you. It's been 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, and nothing's happening. And you're literally now you're coming out for reelection again. And your campaign slogan is just send me money. Bitch, we're done with that. You have to change something. They're not, it's wild to see that they're not changing their behavior. Like their
yes,
pattern is not changing. It's
no,
literally the same exact thing. And so that's how you know they're aware. They are
yes,
aware that their behavior hasn't changed because the Republican establishment, their tactics have changed. I mean, it's the same playbook, but they do keep changing they seem very nimble, especially when it comes to like sort of like on the ground strategy. And so I believe that their function is just to collect money from us and by way of campaign donations. They can campaign donations from everybody. They're just like, I'm available. And it's wild that they will solicit email donations from us in $5. But I think that's only so that they can bring down the average so that their $2 million
mm,
donation that they got from smokers.com or cancerinthecigarettes.com or cancerinthewater.com or cancerinthefood.com that there's giving to their campaign, they need those email $5 donations to get up and say, well, my average donation is $25.
yes.
That's the only reason why. They don't care about the yearly $15. They got $15 million.
Yes,
I'm going on.
absolutely.
So, whew.
No, listen, I want to say right here real quick, when you get one of those text messages, because I come from the political consulting strategy world and the political fundraising world. If when you receive a text message from a campaign and it says like opt out, don't press stop to opt out. Respond. Give your peace of mind in that text
Ah,
message response. There is a staffer who is reading every single
is
one of
there
those responses.
really?
Yes, those responses come through in a report and they see every single response that they get. So whenever Republicans like want to send me stuff, because I get Republican
Mhm.
and Democrat just of I guess the nature of where my information is being sold in Alabama. And every single time
Uh-huh.
I get a Republican sending me something today, just alone, I've sent 5 responses that says "fuck you." Every Republican needs to be in jail, and then they'll respond and be like, "Okay, so we are going to opt you out of this. Thank you." They see it. They see those
Oh,
responses.
okay. Now, don't you think that pretty soon, especially if Palantir has its way, that staffer will be replaced by some kind of AI? I don't
Probably.
know.
Probably. I mean, it might
But
be
that's
at this
good
point.
advice.
Yes, always respond. It's just one other area that people want to do those fax things that are like the bots where it's like you can send 500 messages to your congressman in like one day, or the automated emails where it's like we'll send a
Uh-huh.
blanket email. People always want to do those, but the responding to fundraising text messages is like that is
I
one
mean,
area that's
yeah, if they're going to be
underutilized.
looking, yeah, if they're going to be looking anywhere, it's going to be wherever some money is coming in. We know
Yes,
that.
yep, absolutely. So I want to hit on something related to politics that we are seeing happen right now. We are seeing anti-LGBTQIA plus bills being introduced at massive rates across the country in a
Hmm.
lot of state legislatures. So we know that's going on. But with you specifically, you are so outspoken for your community, for our community, for people that look like you but aren't out. You're being an advocate for them and showing them, like we said, you're being representative and visible for them. So maybe one day they can do this too for people. But being in the entertainment industry, but also being an advocate and an ally and being so out and proud and outspoken, what cost does that come at? And I know that that also might be another loaded question, but It's like, how do you marry those two? Because I'm sure it has not been easy for you.
I'm really grateful that I've been able to utilize sort of my identity, my transness and my blackness and my queerness and sort of talk about those things openly and freely. I felt really empowered to do that in my work in entertainment and film, TV projects and things like that. And so I've been really blessed to have been able to do that. And now that I've gotten a taste of it, I'm definitely not going to stop. Certainly, as things have gotten more political over the
Yep.
past couple of years, it's just feeling the heat has been turning up. Let's just say
Hmm.
that. And we're seeing people speaking out against war and against genocide. And, you know, specifically, as we're being told by this administration, speaking out against the administration or in favor of trans rights now can get you listed as an official terrorist in our country. Of course, that's worrying, and I mean, honestly, even maybe even more scary than the threat of a loss of a acting job. But it comes with the territory, and I say that that's just a sign that we're doing the right thing. If the powers that be are like going to such lengths to disingenuously label you as a terrorist or a terrorist group or organization because you are part of a nonprofit that's like, fighting for LGBT rights or whatever, to fight back against the unconstitutional laws and policies and executive orders that this administration started putting out on day one. This is not like some covert thing. This is a response to
Hmm.
the anti-trans, in this case, anti-trans stance of this administration. And so when that all happens, you can, I need to take it as a sign that we're doing the right thing. But it is difficult, yes, to answer your question. It is difficult. And I also often ask myself, why in the hell? I would be so much I don't know if I'd be happier, but in the short term, I'd be so much happier if I like didn't care about politics, had zero passion for my future, and well, let me not frame it that way. If I just wasn't as concerned with politics as they might impact me down the line, and I was able to be satisfied and sort of satiated with the short term, with
Yeah.
just the visibility, then I could go and work at, I don't know, the mall or something or some other, job. Uh, Listen, labor is also art. I want to make
Mm.
that very, that is the key here, is that the power that we have politically is through organizing through labor. That's, I know that came from out of nowhere, but I don't want to be disparaging at all to a
Sure.
job that's not in entertainment, which is also labor. But um, entertainment is one of the fields that has that it's good, I guess maybe that the person doing the job also has a deep passion that sometimes gets mistaken for the willingness to just like sort of sacrifice themselves for the art.
Yeah.
And but I am passionate. I'm just as passionate about sort of speaking out and using my platform
Yeah.
as I am for the world of entertainment.
Sure.
And I hope that that doesn't mean that I'll suffer the consequences, but what can I do? That just means I'll be a full-time. I mean, maybe that just, listen, you're lucky that half the time I spend, I'm like trying to make sure I look cute so I can do a video because, honey, when you take away my ability to be an entertainer, I'm out on the streets fighting.
Yeah.
And I will, yeah. So the temperature turns up for all of us
Yes. Yes.
when that happens.
Speaking of taking it to the streets, that's a good segue. You were named the New York City Pride Grand Marshal for 2026. So I'm just
Hmm.
curious, as a Black trans woman at this specific moment that we led into the last question with all these anti-LGBTQI plus laws happening in all these states, what
Mhm.
specifically does this moment feel like for you to have this platform as that Grand Marshal in New York City for Pride?
It feels great. It kind of feels like maybe some Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure because I feel like I'm getting a front row seat to living through what we've already been through in the past with regards to fighting for trans rights,
Yes.
fighting for LGBT rights, fighting for Black rights, fighting for voting rights, all these different things, fighting for women's rights, all these different things. And so it feels like I'm getting a front row seat to like a movie that we've already been watching.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think it's really apropos that New York City Pride Committee this year decided to, the theme of this year's Pride March and celebration in New York is For All of Us, which is inspired by Marsha P. Johnson. Of course, everybody hopefully has heard her name by now, but even she's being erased from now being erased. I think I heard some school or something. Did you hear was like going to do a piece that was inspired, a musical piece in their school concert that was inspired by Marsha P. Johnson. It was like
Oh,
an instrumental,
yes.
and then like they wanted to ban it and like all this stuff. Students did a walkout to fight back
Yeah.
against it, but even Marsha is being trying to be erased, and it's so sort of like obtuse because we're watching the federal government and then the supporters of the actions of the federal government cheer in taking down the pride flag from the Stonewall National Monument. It's seemingly without the knowledge that that Stonewall National Monument is a national monument because it's a site of where the modern gay rights liberation movement was kicked off. In huge thanks part in part in huge thanks to people like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, who were removed and sort of collectively the contributions of trans women and drag entertainers and sort of like the people who were considered misfits
Yep.
back in the 60s. They were whitewashed from the story of Stonewall for a couple of decades. The telling of Stonewall in movies and mainstream was basically telling stories of like cute young white guys coming from Iowa and deciding to fight for their own rights with nary a trans woman or a drag queen or maybe one person of color in the film, right? And there was a couple of films that came out about
Yes.
that, and even stories. And so we were taken out, we were erased from that story in the like at the in the 90s and the aughts, and put back in. We had the opportunity to get educated about the legacy that trans women of color and drag entertainers and people who were gender nonconforming and a completely expansive palette of queer folks contributed to the Stonewall uprising. And that wasn't just at Stonewall, that was also at the Black Cat Tavern in Los Angeles. That was also at Compton's Cafe in San Francisco. And it wasn't just like we're upset because we can't dance together. And it's not even just so much, it's certainly not we're upset and we're going to, riot because, Judy Garland passed away. And it wasn't just that we're upset because the police are coming in and raiding this
Hmm.
bar because it doesn't because it's illegal for us to basically dress in drag or wear clothing of the opposite gender. It wasn't just that. It was also that the police were constantly brutalizing, arresting, doing what ICE is doing now in the streets to trans women of color and sex workers who were not even necessarily allowed into those bars, but were out on the street trying to make a living because they were not able to hold a job. They were not allowed to work. They were never hired. Or then sometimes they were obviously fired for being too femme, too this, too that, being a quote unquote misfit. And so these are people who were out on the streets, people who maybe were unhoused, who were sex workers engaging in survival sex work. The police were harassing and brutalizing and arresting these people constantly. And the only place of refuge that many of these people had were inside the places like Stonewall, in the bars, and in these sort of LGBT, and they were not LGBT refuges at the time. They were gay establishments that were mostly geared towards gay white men, but obviously queer folks were all types of queer folks were inside. And so
Hmm.
that is the spirit in which I bring back to the Pride March this year.
Hmm.
It's the theme of Pride March is For All of Us, which is again inspired by Marsha P. Johnson. And that basically goes off of, if there's not if equal rights are not enjoyed for an attack on equal rights for one of us is an attack on equality for all of us, essentially, justice and equality for all of us. And I know this was kind of a long answer, but I do want to also say that like if people are not in New York and unable to, I mean, I certainly think it's worth traveling, but if you can't make it to New York City, then you can give back and participate in your local pride organizations. And I know that many cities We've seen headlines that many cities are canceling their prides. Some have canceled their prides this year and even last year. And so, if that happens, you can give to these organizations. You can find local organizations that help quality of life. The people that I just described, that people that would be out on the street having to engage in survival sex work, are the ones that we need to immediately help
Hmm.
when it comes to the queer community. Donate money towards organizations that help those people, maybe a homeless LGBT shelter, because we know that homeless LGBT youth are the ones who are often out on the streets first and have a higher rate of self-harm, a higher rate of violence against themselves. Uh, 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 Not against themselves, a higher rate of violence enacted upon them.
Yes, yes.
And, give to organizations. You can give to organizations like Advocates for Trans Equality, which is an organization that helped me out with my ID, my documents, my passports, things
Mm.
like that. They have the Name Changes Project, helps trans folks change their name, but they also are engaged in making sure that people have proper legal representation, things like that. So these are the organizations that we need to support. And you can either give directly to them, or you can donate to organizations or buy products that like give to charity to those organizations. And so those are the things I think we can do.
I love that so, so much. I started getting teary-eyed in the middle of your answer, because it's just like I look at the opportunity that I've had. I look at being able to walk down the street and hold my boyfriend's hand, and to be able to go out into public without fear, because of people like Marsha P. Johnson, people like you who are doing the work that you're doing, for people like me in places in ruby red states like Alabama. And one thing that makes me so frustrated, as I said, I'm in ruby red Alabama, and there are so many gay people here who just refuse to learn their history. And what a privilege it is to be able to walk around and not even acknowledge why you have the right and the freedom to walk around and not even think about or even have the slightest bit of fear put in you for who you are. Like, to ignore one's history in this moment, to ignore and to erase the people who came before us to allow us to be who we are, it's so, there's not a word in the English language that is enough to express how sad it makes me. And so, just with that, I think you've beautifully laid out how important it is to know our history, to tell our stories, to document our queer history, queer people of color, making sure that they're represented and not forgotten. For the people who don't have opportunities or the resources to be public facing in their storytelling and their history making, how do they go about documenting their story and making sure that it's preserved for future generations? That's kind of a weird question, but there's so much that we don't know, and there's so much that deserves to be told, and but not everyone has a platform.
I agree with you. And I think our community, the queer community, is operating, pardon me, at a bit of a disadvantage because we don't necessarily have this sort of built-in or baked-in tradition
Yeah,
of carrying on our history, our stories, our cultures through like blood relatives, right? Like, if you
sure.
are of a certain ethnicity or maybe a certain religion, then you have everything from relatives to cultural institutions that are already sort of like baking in those traditions and allow
Mm,
you to learn some of your history. Certainly, probably not a complete version, but some of your history. And so we have a disadvantage as queer folks we're all connected by our queerness globally. We have that in common with somebody born in another country who you've never met, living miles and miles away. You have a lot in common with them as a queer person, but you don't necessarily know each other's history. And that's not going to be passed
yeah.
down, especially when we're seeing uh, once again, it erased from the history books. I mean, we learned so much with Magnus Hirschfeld, the burning and the torching of Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Research in Berlin at the beginning of the rise up to power that the Nazis and Hitler had in right before the war. they burned the books that they burned, the books that the Nazis burned were, in fact, these books from Magnus Hirschfeld. And they weren't only, but and certainly included in some of the first books that they burned were the LGBT books that were in Magnus Hirschfeld's library. And so then people lost all that knowledge. And here we
Yeah.
are today, people thinking that trans is brand new and that we don't have this history. And so it is important to upkeep on our history. But we also live in a country that does not respect history. And I don't want to just blame the United States, because I think that eh, imperialists and empire often use history as a tool to re to shape the opinions of people. And so they're going to tell you that George Washington was this great guy who said he could never tell a lie about chopping down a cherry tree, when there's so many other atrocities that need
Hmm.
to be answered for.
Yes.
We're going to be learn about, we're going to learn that the only thing in Black history that you need to worry about is that, yes, Black people were slaves, but they were freed by Abraham Lincoln, and then Martin Luther King did a speech, and then Black folks are equal, and there's nothing else to learn, when we know that it's so much more than that. When it comes to
Yes.
queer history, certainly that people like Bayard Rustin were very key in shaping organizing and helping write the words of Dr. Martin Luther King for his March on Washington. There were queer people that were very key in the Black Civil Rights Movement. But then even beyond that, as Black folks, for instance, like, we don't learn about the history. We don't get to learn that people like Rosa Parks were actually revolutionaries and wanting to challenge these systems in a way beyond just riding on the bus. I mean, the bus boycott was obviously key, but that's all we've been
Yes.
gifted from the people that write these history books. And so it is incumbent upon each of us to write and record our own history, write stories down on paper. I know it sounds kind of weird, but, like, keeping it on a notepad on your phone is, if in this day somebody might be able to just, like, push a button, and then tomorrow all of our phones reset, and then we lose a lot of those things. And so,
Sure.
like, keep an oral history, this
Hmm.
is where community comes in, talk about the people, learn about things together, read actual books, write things down. I know it puts so much onus on us, but this is what we have to do to fight a system that is trying to erase our history. And it's doing that as we speak, not only taking down the pride flag, but also erasing terms like trans, gender ideology, gender identity, blackness, women's rights, the right to choose, all these different terminologies that they deleted from government websites, and to stop people from being able to access, like, federal funding. All this thing is also an erasure of our history. And I do get offended when, people, don't know our history. I used to get offended, but then I realized it's just a symptom of this larger
Mm.
sort of American imperialist empire that we live at the center of, that only
Yes.
wants to use our identities as a sort of, like, you know, the American empire and capital are very closely connected. They're almost
Yes.
inextricable. And that's because of the history, I believe, in large part because of the history of chattel slavery that still hasn't been listed as a genocide. But it is, I do think it qualifies if we look at
Yes.
the experience of Black people in this country. But that is not in the best interest of anyone who is interested in making money and seeing this
Mm.
country excel at what it's been doing. So erasing history of the people who've risen up and fought back and been, anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist, erasing the history of those people is at the benefit of the people who want to continue doing those things that this
Yes.
country has always done.
Yes.
And so when we don't know our history and we don't preserve it for ourselves, we do run the risk of having to relearn it again.
Yes. Yes. And it's almost like the incomplete telling of history at such a young age. Yeah, like you said, that's purposeful. They're doing that for a reason at such a young age. Because I live in Birmingham, Alabama, but I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. And so always I knew growing up, like Montgomery, Dexter Avenue, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Montgomery bus boycott. Like I knew those things, but it wasn't until I was an adult that I learned just how dense the history of America is on Dexter Avenue. So you have, and follow along. I talked about this in the last episode. I'm going to talk about it again because it's so important. You have Dexter Avenue, this 1 mile long road that at one end you have a big beautiful fountain, the Court Square fountain, and at the other end you have the Capitol. But within that 1 mile, that Court Square fountain used to be the largest slave trade auction block in America. Right next to it, you have the building where the telegram was sent to fire the first shot of the Civil War, sent to Fort Sumter, South Carolina. Across the street from that is the bus station where the bus boycott happened. You go up Dexter Avenue, you have Martin Luther King Jr.'s church that he was pastor at. That all these protests and the organizing happened in the basement of that church. The Montgomery bus boycott was planned at that church. And then just go up a few more steps, you have where Martin Luther King Jr. ended the Montgomery to Selma March and he gave his How Long, Not Long speech. You have so much history on that one
Just
street,
in that
and yet
one.
only like about 25% of it is fully taught. And if people
Less.
understood
Less.
less, and if people understood the symbolism, like this street was literally where the largest slave trade was in America. And it's also where those same people gained their rights and fought and bled and died for them. Maybe our minds would be a little bit different today.
You better preach. And the connection between, the rich, obviously essential history of civil rights struggles in the South, connected with obviously the Confederate history that the South carries, is still connected to, like, the Confederacy. Yes, we know about the Civil War and that the North versus the South, but it wasn't so black and white or cut and dry because New York, which was an early capital of the United States, made almost all of its money in the New York Stock Exchange, which historically was trading profits from the companies, either trading profits from the companies that were from the South, like the cotton exports and all these things were coming through New York. But then also we had our own slave trade up here in at the New York Stock Exchange. There was like
Hmm.
an ancestral burial ground, an African burial ground, where enslaved people were bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange grounds, like where that is on Wall Street. And so like we can't just whitewash and think of
Sure.
US history or even Northern history as like, oh, they were the ones who just like got it right. Like, I mean, I'm not sure who's doing that today, but it is important again to do a deeper dive into our history. And it's so difficult to do that, but it's not difficult to do that. It's daunting. The thought of it is obviously very daunting.
Yes, for sure.
But bringing it back to pride, we have opportunities to learn these things as gifts when you just go to the New York Pride March and you'll be able to pick up a little bit of that history or like watch a little video on it and
Yeah.
you'll be able to like sort of organically hear some of that. And if you do, you will probably see that many of these people, these revolutionaries, these icons, even of the queer rights movement of yesteryear, they were also aware of the connection between the civil rights movement and we're talking so much about civil rights and sort of the black vote because that was a really really key moment that our country sort of changed and
Yep.
leapt forward when it comes to equality for everyday people, and many groups benefited from that, as
Yep.
we mentioned earlier. Not just black folks, obviously women, LGBT folks, different minority groups around disabled folks, people of all different races and religions and things like that. And so, the learning that history is obviously key, preserving it is obviously key. So the people who do not have a big platform, trying to get back to your original question, the people who don't have a big platform, then things that you can do are just, I mean, certainly this is where visibility is probably the first and the easiest and the sort of um, you know, the thing that one individual can do and as soon as they're ready
Yes,
is engage in practicing their own visibility, being out, being proud, being walking in the street, whatever it is that you can do safely, because we also know that attacks on queer people and minority groups in general increase when there is increased visibility.
for sure.
But having that visibility will be the first step, but it's just a temporary thing. It's not permanent and it's not the be all end all, but it is key and it is a major part of what the average person can do.
You have been so open about calling on Hollywood to embrace authentic LGBTQ plus representation
Mm.
in their storytelling. Do you think the industry has been listening and responding appropriately?
I
If
used
not,
to think
why?
so. Again, just
Really?
like there's like pre 2024, post 2024, or whatever. I used to think so. I used to think again that when the only ask was visibility, which was an easy ask, because I thought visibility meant that we were like changing the system, and we were changing the ingredients of the system or the way the
Yeah.
system looks, the face of the system, but we weren't changing how the system works.
Yeah.
And the system, Hollywood, honestly, capitalism, whether it's politics, whether it's in the US, like this capitalist system that we have that is engaged, as I said, in every single area of our
Hmm.
lives, it uses visibility, diversity, uh, identity to gain access to places that it wouldn't usually be invited to.
Mm.
And then once it's in those spaces, the Black women's space, the queer, trans, disabled space, whatever, once it's in those areas, then it uses those identities as a shield to continue to extract whatever it's going to extract
Yeah.
from those communities, whether it's money, whether it's resources, whether it's whatever it is. And it uses those identities as a shield.
Yeah.
And so, what good is having a Black person on a show or a queer trans person on a show if the show is still doing and saying transphobic things,
Yes.
what good is it? And I ask myself that question all the time because what we're seeing visibility happen, and then we were seeing that Hollywood just didn't get it. And I thought that these corporations, Hollywood being sort of like a catch-all, but like certainly many corporations were also doing. We were seeing that like, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, the queer community got hip to, oh, Target will have a rainbow thing on their logo for the
Hmm.
month of June, but then literally turn around and be like, never knew ya on July to the
Yes.
gays. And so we know that that visibility and that sort of inclusion, that surface level inclusion that's just signified by a rainbow logo is not enough because they like rip it off in front of our faces,
Yes.
when the time is up. And so we know now that it's a completely different game and it's not enough. So Hollywood, I don't believe has done enough. Now Hollywood is a collective, right? Like there is mostly being run by sort of these corporate storytellers
Yeah.
who have
Yeah.
never given up. The same people that were so enthusiastic about telling harmful stories about people of color and trans folks and disabled folks and women and blah 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 blah. They were so enthusiastic about making movies that would show us being harmed and kind of celebrating those things. Those are the same executives that are still sitting in those seats today that are using the identity of Black folks or identity of queer folks or trans folks as sort of a token. And so, like, just because there's a star or they decided to rewrite, 1776, which was about like the founding fathers of the United States and the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the
Hmm.
Constitution, but cast it as all Black women. Okay, that's cute, but it's still fucking Thomas Jefferson who owned slaves. So like, how do we reconcile with that? So like, Black faces and high spaces are not going to save
Oh
us.
my God.
You know, ki- ki- all kinfolk, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Zora Neale Hurston. That is what we need to remind ourselves of.
Hmm.
Having the face that looks like us is not enough when we're really trying to codify and lock in our rights and our
Yes.
protections. And we have to realize the United States is only 250 years old this year. That's not long. That's a long time for you and me, but that's not a long time in the grand scheme of history. And so this experiment or whatever this scheme, this scam that is the United States is very young, and a lot of the things that we've seen in history are so recent. And so we even though a lot of that history is kept from us and erased, it is important to realize that what we thought was working back in the day. I used to think, all monopolies were illegal. Not so much anymore. Our monopolies are what the lifeblood of the United States.
Hmm.
I used to think that, oh, all we have to do is get a Black person in. But just as we realized that people were saying, well, you had a Black president, doesn't that mean racism is over? Stop talking about it. People were saying that.
Yeah.
And then we realized, oh, wait a minute, we're not on the same page. No, just having a Black president doesn't like cancel racism. and it certainly doesn't cancel the racist history that exists in our country.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure we continue to learn about those things. As we can see that they're removing those stories, the histories that you talked about there in Alabama, they're removing those stories from the history books as we
Yeah.
speak. And so, it's important that we realize that, yes, that visibility, yes, getting a person from one minority group or this marginalized community in a position of power is important and is necessary to do, but that matters less to me than knowing that the person in the position in power is knowledgeable and dedicated to making sure that everybody in that said minority group gets equal access to their food, their housing, their health, their safety, and their equal
Yes.
constitutional rights. You can be white and male all day in a position of power if you are going to fight for black folks and queer folks and trans folks and women and disabled folks and immigrants the way that you would fight for your white ass.
Yes.
Then stay in that office, because I would much rather have a white guy who's fighting for all those communities than a black person who ignores them.
110%. I could not say it better myself. Yes. So listen, for the next question, you're probably going to want to sip your tea for this one.
Okay.
Because what flavor are we sipping?
Mmm. Thank you. You notice I've been drinking tea all day. I'm sipping Peppermint's Transcendence. It's my tea blend that I've done in partnership with Moody Teas. And this
Okay.
is a delicious tea, darling. You can have it iced, you can have it hot, you can have it cold. It's a deep blue vanilla mint herbal tea, non-caffeinated. And a portion of every single sale of this tea goes to advocates for trans equality. So, listen, if you are not sure how to give back and how to fight and how to be engaged, you can be helping out trans people just by sipping tea. And I can guarantee you that your tea is, compared to this tea, your tea is transphobic.
Listen, well, I'm happy you're sipping it right now because there are some Rue girls who I have tried to get on the podcast that refuse to come on the podcast because they don't want to speak about politics. One thing that I want to speak to with what you're just talking about and what I want you to sip the tea for is the fact that there are drag artists who are out there who are benefiting from the work that people like you are doing, but they refuse to speak out for their community. They fail to meet the moment and knowing that all drag, in my opinion, is political. And so I'm just curious from your standpoint where you stand with what you've experienced, what you have to say to those drag artists who refuse to get political and speak out.
Listen, I think even those drag artists would probably, and anybody who's listening might agree that I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I would like to think that an artist who takes time to paint a picture and uses all of the resources and the materials and all the things and the skill that it takes to create a beautiful picture or a painting or a landscape or whatever the picture is going to be, or to create a beautiful creation, uh, or maybe not so beautiful, but just to create a creation from the heart, is more akin to our definition of art than some computer, AI that just spits out some colors that doesn't even
Yes.
know like what it is. And that's because I believe art really does need to reflect the world that's going on around it, including drag. Drag is art, and art is subjective, but I believe it's not art if it doesn't reflect what's going on around it, if it's not talking about the things that's happening in the world today in some
Mm,
way. It doesn't mean we don't need to write a speech at the Capitol. You can use it in your drag entertainment. You can use it in your performance, however you're going to do it. It can be as sort of subversive or coded or whatever as you want. But if it doesn't do those things, then it's just commerce. Then you're
yes.
just putting on a dress for money. That's all you're doing. And I know we all need money. I'm not bashing anybody for getting paid because
Yep.
activism does not pay, but in money, in monetary dollars. But drag, if art is not, if what we're calling art, if the painting that we're looking at, if the picture or the drag entertainer that we're looking at is uninspired, then it's useless. And actually, it's useful. It's not useless. I take that back. It's useless to the community, but it's useful to the systems that want to harm the community, because that's, again, that's that face that's
Yep.
being used to sort of whitewash the situation. And so I think drag entertainers should speak up and speak out, and join forces with the queer and trans activists that are marching in the streets, and use your drag in a way that uplifts activism or sends a message about, or just your opinion about what this administration is doing to other people in your community. If your performance just conveys to the audience that you have an opinion about that, whatever that opinion is, then I think it's art. But otherwise, it's useless and it will be forgotten. It'll be erased by the people that
Mm-hmm.
you think are you're joining forces with.
Yes, absolutely. So would you say all drag is political?
100%. Drag is political because it challenges gender. It challenges it ought to challenge capital. It certainly challenges the man, the system. It
Yep.
challenges patriarchy. It
Mm-hmm.
challenges so many things, and I believe it should continue to challenge those things and not just like sort of lay down and relinquish all of its power. But there
Well,
are people who are drag entertainers because they cut their teeth in a world that and in an environment and in nightclubs and bars where that sentiment was swirling around. And then there are people who decided to put on drag because they watched it on a clip on Instagram from
yeah,
a drag competition show.
sure, sure. Peppermint, we've made it to the final question.
Oh my God.
So I know long time coming to get to this question because it's my favorite one to ask. So I have to ask, what is it that you are not wrong about?
I'm not wrong about anything I talked about today. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not wrong about making wanting every single person to be sipping towards their health. Peppermint tea has health benefits, and I want people to enjoy a nice glass of iced tea this summer. And it should be peppermint transcendence tea that gives back to the trans community. I'm not wrong that the trans community at large is in need and deserving of love. And when I say love, I don't
Yes.
mean the love is love kind. I mean the justice is what love looks like in public
Mm-hmm.
by Cornell West quote. I mean that kind of love. And the trans community is in an era where this administration is taking our rights away, labeling the trans folks and our supporters as terrorists and threats to America, and taking away access to passports, and taking away access to gender affirming care, and taking away access to play fairly in sports, and taking away access to this and that. The trans community is in need of love. And one way that you can love the trans community is to contribute and donate to organizations that help them out, like Advocates for Trans Equality. Ways that you can do that are purchasing this tea that gives money towards them. You can go to glad.org/peppermint NYC for more information on the GLAD as Advocates for Trans Equality partnership that just launched. I got a text message and I'm clear to mention it. And that's a part of my duties as NYC Grand Marshal, one of the NYC Grand Marshals. This year, we all are partnering with various nonprofit organizations, and mine is Advocates for Trans Equality. So I've got the T.
Yes.
GLAD is in on the game because I'm also one of the board members of GLAD. And that's one way that people can give back. And so I'm right about all those things.
I love it. Tell me, where can I go and buy your tea? Because I'm the second we hang up here, I am going and I'm buying a shit ton
Yes,
of it.
please.
So please
It
tell me where to
is.
go.
Yeah, people can Google Peppermint's Transcendence at Moody Teas, but you can go to my link in bio on my social media, mostly in my Instagram, which is Peppermint247 on all platforms. And you can see a link for the tea at the top. You can click to buy it and, sip your way to trans acceptance and equality.
I love it. Listen, Peppermint, I am so appreciative for your spirit, your energy, your love, your dedication, your activism, for your time. I cannot say thank you enough. I cannot wait for my audience to be able to hear our conversation, to hear your wisdom and your expertise. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being in the fight and putting up the fight that you are. You are so beautiful. I am so in love with everything that you said today, and I cannot say thank you enough for everything. Thank you so much, Peppermint.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chad.